Welcome to Rest, Resiliency and Empowerment Seminar today. This is a show where we interview CEOs of small and mid-sized businesses, nonprofit executives, and other community leaders to shine a light on their organizations, their professional journeys, and their resiliency. I am so excited today to have Walter Contreras as one of our guests. Walter is a fellow Melville Chamber of Commerce member like myself. He is the founder and CEO of Motiva Networks, which he launched in 2007. And he brings with him more than 25 years of technology industry leadership, computer software, and hardware expertise. As CEO, he oversees the corporate direction and strategy for Motiva's operations that covers sales, support, consulting, marketing, and partnerships. And he has such a core value about small businesses, and we'll hear more about that in our show today. Before he decided to create Motiva, he worked at Northwell Health System as a technology support engineer. And there he was truly inspired to help others with his knowledge of information technology. And he saw firsthand how technology can save lives. And it's with Walter's vision that he really expanded the IT services offerings from being very traditional to really truly serving small business owners. Walter holds an MBA in management and leadership from Dowling College. With that, I'm going to ask Walter to take us back to early in his career to hear more about why he decided to focus on technology.
Susan, thank you so much for that introduction. That was awesome.
You're welcome.
And thank you for having me, by the way. I'm really pleased to be here. It's interesting for me, I was a Boy Scout, and I was fortunate enough I grew up in El Salvador during probably one of the most difficult times. We had a massive earthquake in 1986, and I was a Boy Scout at the time. And I remember, when everybody was scared to go back into their homes and everything else, and I remember my mother being all scared, the first thought that came to my mind was, I got to get my uniform on and go serve.
Wow.
And I was about somewhere around 14, 15 years old. So serving for me has been a huge part of my life. I've been always connected to what can I do to help somebody to get better at X. And for those reasons is why it's been part of my life right now.
That's so wonderful to see how that event, where something that could have been a negative, you ran towards the situation to go and help. And not a lot of people would do that. So it takes somebody really special. So
Thank you.
I'm starting to see now, like, why giving back and going towards the situation is really important to you. So how did you decide from, okay, you're helping, to then, join a company and then later to start your own business? Take us through that journey.
Technology has been on my DNA. I was also fortunate enough to have gone to a tech school. They were very, very advanced in robotics and electronics at the time. And I remember being just fascinated by watching the high schoolers, building these robots and stuff. And for me, that was it. I was connected to it. So when I came to the United States and I had the opportunity to go to school, which is long, long after, it was interesting to me working at the hospital that, that we were transitioning between the old school terminal systems into personal computers. And that was a huge opportunity for me because I learned the personal computer from scratch. And I remember being obsessive about it. Like I will take computers apart, stay up all night, putting them back together. And so that gave me an edge. When people will come to me in the hospital and say, hey, how do you do X? I will be like, sure, let me show you. And the fascination for me was making the connection from the
Oh.
technology standpoint to the gratitudes on people's faces when I made them happy about, showing them how to use Windows, which is a huge big deal for the older people. And so I made the connection somehow subconsciously in my brain first, and that's kind of how it clicked. One day, click, and I said, "Wait a minute, I could do this. I could do this actually better than most people I know." And so because I care, and that was the difference. That's kind of how I got started.
And what was it like to shift from being in a more corporate role to then launching your own business? And I imagine at first doing everything, right? So, from um, digging in deep to helping people get their computers all set up to, oh, I also have to work on strategy and I have to grow my business and get customers, and oh yeah, and I have to do payroll too. So how was that?
I've been very lucky. I call myself lucky because I have been put in different positions where swim or die, right? So, like I remember, my first gig I had here with when I came to the United States. I used to work with my uncle, and he was a machine operator. And the
Oh,
guy, he was just incredibly methodic about everything. Although it was hard physical labor, but he taught me a big lesson. And the biggest lesson I learned from him was there's no small or big job that you don't have to go 1,000%. So he will do things, we used to do these oil tanks installations, and he will go and like clean the grass, and I will be like, why are you cleaning the grass? And he's just like, no, because we have to make it look like we weren't here. So that fascination first was a big thing for me. And then working in a hospital gave me a lot of corporate structure. Like I saw how the chain of command works, and by the way, sometimes it actually doesn't work. So I saw that too, when the chain of command is too difficult to reach the top and decisions cannot be made.
yes.
So by the time I had my opportunity to do it, I saw it. I saw the opening. I think as a small business entrepreneur at the beginning, you do so many things, and you try to figure it out. But I actually had a pretty good starting. I was very lucky that way.
Yes, and I see behind you is a sign that says work harder, and that truly embodies who you are. It's so fitting. Um, uh, this is fantastic. So tell me more. This also gets to some of your core leadership values. So tell me about, go deeper into the service mentality. What else is it that's like a core value to who you are?
Look, in our company, we understand really well what's more important to us, and it's not cliche. We work our way backwards from our customer, right? Any decisions we made. I mean, I've said at meetings where we could have saved, I don't know, $5 per month per user for a different antivirus or a different tool, and we just won't do it because for us we know what's important and we never lose track of that. It's funny because it, I lead by example, but at some point when you start growing, your team has to lead. You no longer lead, and if you're still leading, maybe that's a different problem. But I tend to think that the empowerment comes from letting other people lead, but you also have to make them accountable. And before you make them accountable, you have to empower them. And empower them means training them, coaching them, and maybe more important than anything, making sure that they understand the mission. Once it clicks in their heads, sky's the limit. Because and it's actually kind of awesome when you're having a meeting and you're having a meeting with other people. I had a meeting recently with a big software company, and there were a couple of my team members on there, and I said to them, guys, what's the first rule of business? And we talk about this all the time, and they said, know your customer, because that's a thing for us, right? And the other company was so impressed that culturally we have had an incredible amount of people believe in what we're doing. and that's how we roll. You know, that's how we been doing lately too. It's just an incredible empowerment for us.
It's so heartwarming, really, to hear that you're a true mission and values led company, because these are the companies that are going to be successful not only now but into the future, is people really understanding what are you all about, what do you stand for, and then that trickles down into your staff and how you relate to the customer, so it's all integrated. It's wonderful, Walter. So thank you for what you're
Thank you.
doing and
Thanks, Elizabeth.
how you are leading. So over the years in technology, we know that technology always changes, right? So how
Every
have
second.
you how have you and your company, and how have you led the company through all these different changes?
Look, I think even if I wasn't, like my mother always says, you know, if you were making shoes, you probably make the best shoes in the world. I think that, you know, I subscribe to the idea that I'm either evolving or I'm dying. And so for those reasons, I'm not saying that I reinvent my business model every so often. We have a very core focus on what we do, and there's one thing that we do. However, there's many ways to skin that cat, right? So, you know, we're very creative. We're super hyper connected to the technologies. Like right now, I'll give you an example. We have a spin-off company that today was an incredible day for that company because they got approved for something huge from a vendor. And this is a software
Wow.
development company. That's a spin-off from Motiva, right? But it would never have been born if there wasn't that evolution piece for the next thing, and that's leading to artificial intelligence, machine learning. We're creating a hub spot for Long Island talent, which happens to be a big problem for me, that we don't have, you know, we don't have incubators for incredible software development talent that we have. And it's a shame because I'll be honest with you, I hear so many people tell me they don't want to work in the city. They don't want to take that 2 hour ride and come back and tire and all that. They would love to work on Long Island. So we're working to create those jobs now, and we've done really well, but we need a lot more. We need to create that environment. So for us, is the continuation of our core values and understanding where we do our best work.
So it goes back to that focus on the customer and anticipating trends
Right.
and moving toward change as opposed to running from it.
So
So
yeah, think
that
about
Boy
like
Scout mentality
you know,
lives on.
it's very similar. Like I think about it right now. This horrible situation we're living. And by the way, my heart and prayers go out to everyone who's affected by this. I got to tell you though, the companies that have been either doing the work or refocusing and restructuring will have a tremendous opportunity after this. And I'm not saying that everyone will. I'm just saying that maybe, right? Because I'm thinking like I'm very connected to businesses. Like I walk into a restaurant and I'm like, what can I do better? Why is the light like this? You know, all the kind of stuff. But I was thinking about my local restaurants and I was saying, look, some of these guys do business very old school way. They don't want Uber Eats. They don't want to pay the percentage for deliveries, but those guys right now would love to have that, right? So it goes back to the innovation part. You're either innovating or dying. Someone else is gonna beat you to it. That's why I love business, because business is a sport, right? And someone's trying to beat you all the time, and so it's a competitive space. But let me tell you, it's so exciting. I am so optimistic about the future, not just for us, but also for companies that this is going to be a kick in the ass, right? They're going to either start changing the way to do business or someone else is going to do it.
Yes. Yes. And I think through this particular time, a key word I keep hearing is pivot. How do you pivot? How do you keep moving forward? And there's a lot of choices that we can make now around how we decide to show up as leaders, how our mindsets are, how we can inspire others. Which leads me to my next question is about how are you inspiring others to be resilient?
Look, I think the whole word pivot, it's great, but at the same time, there are some people that can't do it, right? If I'm a restaurant and I'm not gonna pivot to, all of a sudden be an Uber driver, right? But the idea behind it will be if you're a restaurant, like I said to one of my friends in my town, I said, dude, just put a big sign that says you're open for takeout. Here's your Vimeo number, right? And just text me the money and come and pick it up. And by the way, he's been staying open and is one of the only restaurants that's selling barbecue chicken, and he's killing it. Uh,
Wonderful.
but it wasn't that he pivoted; he just changed the idea. And and
Yes.
and that's the thing about, I think, most of us. The reason why I'm doing these webinars online right now that you saw is because I want to shake people up. I wanted to say, hey, listen, I get it. You're stuck. I understand it, right? Like I said to my friend yesterday, he said, my wife does hair color. She can't do anything. That's not true, because she could do a YouTube video, right? A YouTube channel
Yes.
costs you nothing, right? And start teaching people how to do colors. I can almost guarantee you she will have thousands of views because people are not doing anything right now, right? So they're watching YouTube videos. And text all your friends and let them know to share that thing. So I think there's just creative ways to do things. And I just want to make sure that people are getting motivated to do it. When it comes to business, I'm just so passionate about the fact that there's so many other ways you could do certain things and still do it well. Just because it was done one way doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be like that forever. And in fact, we're proving it right now. You and I are on Zoom, right? This would have
Yes.
never happened on Zoom. So it's a great time. It's a horrible time, but it's also an opportunity, and that's kind of how I look at it.
Yes, and I agree. It's really about opening up people's minds to think outside of what they used to do. How can they do something that they can still shine and show their talents in a different medium than they were used to doing before?
Well,
And I
that's
love,
that's kind of how I got you. Like I love what you're doing right now, and that you all of a sudden say, well, I'm not doing this, but I'm gonna do this, right? And by the way, this I love too, and maybe I love it even more. And that's what I'm passionate about. I love people that can say that, because that's the resiliency. That's the when you talk about courage, that's the
yes,
courage, right? You're gonna go through it. It's gonna suck, right? Just yesterday, I was so mad because nothing was working for my demo for today, and I had a big meeting with a big software company, second largest in my industry, and my stuff is not working. I was beyond mad. And you know what? I said, just chill, go back to work. And this morning, it was a complete success. So that's the courage. The courage is to go through it, even if it hurts.
yes. So I think it's about continuing through. It's embracing those butterflies in your stomach. I always tell people that's where the magic growth happens when those butterflies are embraced. It's been such a joy, Walter, to talk to you. What is a takeaway or insight that you would like to leave our audience with today?
Resiliency. I want people to think about their business not as something that is just this one static thing. I want them to think of their business as, because look, I work with a lot of small businesses, right? And I love it because it's so passionate. It's a family business usually. It's either growing or dying, right? There's no in between. Yeah, there are some people who have that lifestyle business kind of thing, but for the most part, you can see on the entrepreneur's eyes, what they're passionate about, right? Maybe somebody who's like really into growing the business, they just don't know how. They never went to business school. Maybe they never understood the numbers, which is a huge problem. But, you know, but they still do it, right? And so those are the
Yes.
guys that I love to work for, ladies. And that that for me has always been the message. You know, just because you don't know one thing doesn't mean you can't figure it out. I was terrified, and I tell you, Susan, terrified to look at numbers when I started my company. And up until a couple of
Ah,
years ago, you know, I started working with a business coach about 4 or 5 years ago, and you know, we went through the roof because all of a sudden I started to learn about, you know, numbers. I started to learn you have to know your numbers in business. You have to know
yes.
everything about your numbers. You know, my mother-in-law works with me, and she's a very lovely lady. She actually is awesome on the phones. And so I was telling my wife that I have a number for everybody. And what I mean by that is, you know, when it comes to technicians, I know how many tickets they close, how many phone calls they make, blah, blah, blah. And she said to me, she said, "You have a number for my mom too?" And I said, "You bet your ass I do. I know exactly how many calls she makes. I know everything about." So, but the idea is like not to be a control freak, right? Because that's not gonna help you.
No.
But it's just you gotta understand your business. You gotta understand what moves the needle, one way or the other, by the way. And so for me, that resiliency is so important. And the courage, you know, I'm at Columbia University right now, finishing up my business degree. And,
Awesome.
you know, I have a classmate that had extremely successful. He owns like 3 or 4 of those printing shops. And when he started in our class, he said to me, "Walter, I am terrified to open up my QuickBooks." And like him, there are thousands of people. I know a lot of people. And I said, "Calvin, we're going to go through that together." And I'm proud to say, like, this is our last semester. Next semester is our last semester. He is
Wow.
the king. He was actually just featured on a magazine because he's just awesome. So that's what it takes. And what you're doing, Susan, is part of that, right? Because you're going to put this video somewhere and you're going to show people, look, you could do this, right? And that's
Yes.
what it's all about.
Well, thank you so much, Walter. You are
My pleasure.
giving in every sense of the word.
Thank you.
And I just love what you're about and what you stand for and how you show up in business is also how you show up in your personal life, how you show up in your school life. It's just very, very
Thank
heartwarming.
you.
So, very importantly, before we end today's show, how can people find you, Walter? Because I want to make sure that they know how to get in touch with you.
So they can go to my website. It's just Motiva, Motiv as in Victor A.net. My profile is on there. It's easy to find me. The phone number is right on the first page with my picture. They won't miss it. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. So if they want to private message me, if they have questions about, look, I'm doing a lot of private sessions, right? So for me, it's about giving. So if anyone needs help, if anyone needs a business strategy, if anyone's stuck with marketing, like you know, we're doing a seminar this week about how to build an e-commerce page in under 10 minutes. So if you're a
Wow,
restaurant that cannot take payments online right now, just ping me on LinkedIn. I'll show you how to do it.
that's fantastic. So, again, that's motiva.net. And we had the absolute honor and pleasure today from hearing from Walter Contreras, the CEO. Thanks for tuning in to Rest, Resiliency, and Empowerment Seminar today. Until the next time.
Thank you.